Alright, so hi guys, long time no see. I'm back after a long break from YouTube. Basically, I went like a whole year without posting anything. I recorded a lot, but for some reason, I just never got to actually editing any type of video. I didn't feel like there was a lot of intention behind it. Like, I'm always taking videos of everything. I'm always recording my life, my family, things I do, like little accomplishments and things. But yeah, I just never brought myself to completing a YouTube video last year. But it's 2026 currently, and since I'm trying to get back to YouTube a little bit more consistently, I wanted to do like a recap of my photography. Usually I do like a yearly recap, except that I kind of missed last year's yearly recap, like at least like around the start of the year type. So I wanted to make a video of like sort of like a recap of a little bit of my personal life, and specifically more so my photography. So in the beginning of last year, I can't even remember, to be honest with you. So I have this really bad problem where if I don't record something, I feel like I'm going to forget it. And usually I do. And the only reason why I'm able to, I feel like, have a lot of memory is specifically because I record them or take photos. So I feel like that's a big reason why I'm always trying to record everything, because it's like, if not, I feel like my memory is just gonna mess up everything and I'm not gonna remember things specifically. And I feel like if I have it recorded, I'm able to look back at it and be like, oh, okay, I did that. So yeah, in the beginning of last year, it felt very calm, I think. I spent a lot of time with my family. I like going out to nature a lot. One thing I do remember I did last year, usually I like to go to Teotihuacan very often, just so, I don't know, it just feels like a really familiar place, at least here in Mexico. Well, I don't live so far from it, so it's always nice to go and visit and kind of see a place that's always sort of frozen in time. So it just feels really nice to go. Also, it's a very good place to people watch. So I usually like to take my camera, obviously. That is one thing I think last year taught me a lot, is really getting to know my camera. Well, nowadays, I'm always shooting on manual. It's kind of what I've gotten accommodated with. So not that like you have to shoot in manual, it's just a personal choice. And I really enjoyed it. And last year, coming to this year, I guess, I have felt so much more comfortable shooting, especially with street photography. I think I pushed myself a lot out of my comfort zone to go ahead and shoot things that I see or might have second guessed a few years back. But now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna push myself a little bit more to capture something. And with that, I've definitely seen advancement within my own photography to the type of photography I've always wanted to capture. I'm not 100% to where I want to be, and I don't think I'll ever be. That just being an artist, I feel like creative, I don't feel like you're ever truly comfortable with how your art is, you know, coming out as. It's more so just getting comfortable with the process and, you know, the result of something that you put so much effort into. But last year, I definitely pushed myself a lot more. And I think I started to see it. I really started to push myself through the beginning of the year with a few instances and opportunities that I had to photograph. So one being the Teotihuacan, where it's like very fun to just people watch and sort of observe the tourists as well. As a Mexican, it's kind of, well, we have the Mundial, or the World Cup, coming up. So I feel like that's also something I really want to capture. As somebody who lives in Mexico, it's just, I always find it interesting to just tourist watch and see how people come into our country and sort of navigate, you know, because they're like sort of lost a lot of times. But I also see a lot of appreciation, which I appreciate. Yeah, it's something I like to photograph. But Also, another instance that I really have fun with photographing here in Mexico is the parades. We have this yearly sort of cultural parade that happens in my city. And this year I also photographed it, but I won't be showing those photographs since I'm talking about last year's instances. But last year, oh, you know what? Last year's cultural parade, it was raining. So that was sort of a very fun thing. I remember we came out and it wasn't necessarily cloudy, and I thought it was gonna be sunny because personally I like a very harsh light, but in that instance there was a lot of rain. Like, it was pouring on us and it was quite harsh. But everybody still showed up and everybody was still dancing in the rain and just like really enjoying the moment. I can't remember if I got any shots that I necessarily really liked, but the experience overall was really fun, and it just showed me like the resilience of a lot of Mexicans to keep our culture alive, and a little bit of rain isn't gonna hurt anyone, so everybody kept going. It was really fun to photograph. It was probably one of my favorite moments from last year when it comes to photography. I remember we went to a little birthday trip for my sister, and we went to Veracruz. I was really trying to just grab my camera and take it everywhere with me. So I took it to Veracruz, and it was very chill. I remember it being very calm, very serene. The weather was a little cloudy, which wasn't as obviously as I like, but even then I still pushed myself to photograph because you never know what type of photographs you're gonna get. I have found at least that taking my camera, even when it's cloudy and even when it's like a climate that I don't really like for my photographs, I'm still sort of happy with the results. Everybody really likes to get in the water. I didn't get in the water this instance, except probably my legs, I think. But yeah, I just really focused the little trip to photograph the people on the beach, and I think I got a few shots in black and white. And that is something I've realized, that when it comes to cloudy days or atmospheres, I think that really lends itself to black and white, which a little hack that I kind of stole from my dad. Well, some cameras, at least with the Sonys, there's like presets. I don't know what you call them specifically, but there's like presets that you can put onto the photograph, like your viewfinder, and then you take the photo and the result is with that little filter onto your camera. Even though I shoot in RAW, and so when I pass them to my laptop, I always edit them from their RAW. But while you're shooting, it makes it really fun to photograph with a preset. So usually I shoot with a little bit more saturation and less contrast. So that's sort of how I go around photographing. But so in this instance, when it's a cloudy day, I usually like to go over on a black and white preset, which I think really, it makes me focus, well, more so with the shapes rather than the lighting, because the lighting is very flat. But the shapes, at least looking at it through a black and white viewfinder, it lets me isolate subjects a lot more and sort of really think about what I'm going to photograph rather than just like quickly shooting something. Yeah, so I think it lends itself really focus on the subject and not shooting things just because. I feel like in street photography, if you look at like Instagram and stuff, or reels or TikToks of street photographers, I feel like a lot of people tend to do really quick shooting, which I love, not gonna lie. I think there's instances where you just like kind of shoot and pray that you got a good image. But last year at least, I've really tried to really hone down into like slowing down. I feel like I'm a very anxious person. I feel like I'm very socially awkward in a lot of instances. So I try to like really get things done and really just finish a situation just to finish it, or go through moments really fast in my life. And I feel like, at least for me, the whole point of photographing something and capturing a moment is so that you can sit with it. And so we can really appreciate a moment for what it is. I've tried to really slow down, and last year I think I really tried to slow down with my photography, enjoy the moments a little bit more, and stay behind my viewfinder a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, just so I can really appreciate the moment. And I don't know, also you get sharper images, which I'm always a fan of. I think last year showed me that I really need to slow down a lot more, and I still feel like I can work on that. I still feel like I go through moments just a tad bit too fast, but I think slowing down my heart rate and looking through my viewfinder a little bit longer helps with really appreciating photography, and at least my photography for what it is. Yeah, so the beginning of the year really looked like just very sort of like my usual pace that I'm always at, especially because I grew up here in Mexico for quite a while. So I've gotten used to just the mundane, and I feel like things here are a lot slower than they are in the United States. So this is where I feel like pacing really started to get a lot quicker when I moved to the US. Yeah, so I was in Atlanta with my dad for quite a while. I think for like a month or so. So I moved around with my dad during this a lot of last year just because of his work. So I took this time really to sort of, get with the pacing of the US where everything's like really fast. You're obviously trying to get some work done. Well, one thing that really helps is that my dad is also a street photographer. So in our free time, we really like to go out and just shoot what we find and sort of explore the new cities that we're around. And in this instance, I photographed Atlanta. I remember that I feel like a lot of what you'd know about a place is on social media or from documentaries. And it's quite different when you're actually there. I feel like a lot of, I don't know if it was the season. I remember it was around maybe May. I expected Atlanta to be very, very lively, and I don't think I saw that part of Atlanta, and it might have just been me. I think I really want to go back and visit just so I can get to see the lively part of Atlanta. But I remember I did get to see quite a few things. I saw a furry convention, which was funny. I feel like I'm always I stumbled upon a furry convention a few years back as well, except that I didn't have my camera with me. But I remember I did I wanted to do like a walkie-talkie. Shout out Polly B. I wanted to do like the type of walkie-talkie with my dad because he's very into street photography, and he's one of the big reasons why I appreciate photography for what it is. I just really wanted to give him a moment to talk about his photography, and I got a few videos of him talking throughout the city, but I ended up not making the video just because the audio was really, really bad quality. I didn't end up uploading that video to YouTube just because of that, but it's definitely a project that I really want to work on just so you guys can really take time and appreciate my dad's photography, because I think he understands street photography a lot more than I ever will. In that instance, I just feel like his work speaks for himself. I think I'll put up a few of his shots that he took last year, because I did shoot a lot with my dad last year, and it's just always really cool to go out and shoot with somebody. So me being able to shoot with my dad is obviously one of the peaks of last year. But yeah, after Atlanta, I remember I went to sort of like the coastal area of North Carolina, which is where I'm from. If you guys didn't know, I'm from NC. But I remember the drastic change of obviously being in the city of Atlanta to then going to the coastal area of NC and like the NC beaches. It was a lot more chill. I remember we had quite a few storms, which was a little scary, not gonna lie. Just because you never know with weather. And I remember I didn't go out as much to shoot around the actual city part of NC, but I remember we did go shoot a few times at the beach just to go, you know, walk and people watch a lot. I think I needed that sort of like slow pace moments for my photography as well. I feel like I appreciate the photography, as I said, when I'm slowing down a lot more, when I'm just very calm. And the beach definitely helps with that. So being around the beach really, I feel like really calms down your spirit. I remember I got a few shots that I really like even till now. I think that's when I started to explore a little bit more with color grading. So I'm very into editing my pictures. I know some people like to shoot straight out of camera and just like keep their photography to that. But one of my favorite parts of being a photographer is the editing part. And my color grading self always just wants to keep exploring colors around where I am. And the ocean is obviously very blue, and I really appreciate that sort of hue. And obviously color grading is I feel like you gotta be very specific with the type of colors you're trying to balance, because blues, obviously, at the under end of blue is red, or like your oranges, and one affects the other. So I feel like I'm always struggling with that, and I'm always trying to find the balance between those two colors, just so that my image looks nice, in my opinion. I feel like obviously as a photographer, I'm very visual, but I really appreciate like just the pretty things. Like if I see something pretty, I'm just gonna photograph it. Like that's just, it really comes down to that, I think. But I don't know, I'm just a sucker for color. I think I'll always be sticking to color with my street photography. Not that I dislike black and whites. I think last year I shot a lot more in black and white than I did in previous years. It just, I don't know, color, there's so much color, and I feel like every city and every place you're at has sort of different hues to it. So I'm always trying to understand sort of the hues of the city and translate that to my photography. Also, a great opportunity I had last year was the opportunity to shoot a few weddings. I think I had this predisposed notion of what being a wedding photographer meant, and I don't know, I always hear people complaining and maybe it's just the side of social media that's being pushed onto me and in my algorithm. But I think if you're interested in wedding photography, going into it with an open mind and sort of just create your own opinions within your own experience in wedding photography, because I just feel like when it comes to events, it's fast-paced and it's sort of stressful, and it's a lot of working with people, like and big big sets of people, which to me personally is a little harder, just because I'm quite introverted, I think. And I don't really enjoy being in large gatherings. I was sort of comparing weddings with events, and in my brain, I don't really appreciate events as much as I do with weddings. I feel like with events, there's not too much emotion in it. It's just sort of like an event that everybody has to go to, usually quite formal, and people are just sort of have to go because they have to go. Rather than a wedding, where I feel like a wedding, it's loved ones going out of their way to be there for such an important moment in a person's life. And I don't know, it's just, well, at least the weddings I did last year, it just opened my mind to the emotional part of it. I didn't know I was going to be so happy or positive in these situations. But it really is just a thing of like people's energy, spreading out in the room or the environment. And so in a wedding, everybody's happy, everybody's positive. I really feed off of that energy for my work when it comes to weddings. So I don't know, it's just, if it's a positive environment, I feel like I feed off of that, and it feeds into the energy I need to give off for a lot of these moments, because I'm talking to people and I'm working with people, and I'm thinking about, besides the photography, like, how can I make this moment special and sort of keep everything flowing and going. So I don't know, it in the same way that it's stressful, it's also very rewarding, because obviously you're photographing somebody's wedding. It's like very like high stakes. I always tell people that it's like, I feel like the day before, or at least the week before the wedding, I'm like highly stressed. Like I'm like planning everything. I make my mood boards. I plan out the things that I have to work around, and I've been a lot more prone to becoming a lot more thoughtful of every single photo session because of weddings, because it's way more comfortable getting somewhere, knowing what your plan is and how you're gonna execute things, rather than just arriving and sort of having to think about things that you could have thought about before. So I've planned out a lot more in weddings, which has helped me with other photo sessions, which is great. I think my work always is better in any aspect of photography or anything else when it comes to the creative. I feel like planning things out prior is always helpful. Also, keeping in mind that things can go sort of sideways or not go as planned. I guess being open-minded so you can work around them and problem solve very easily because you've thought about it prior. I guess for a person who's prone to overthinking, for me it's very natural to like overthink and think of things and how they could go wrong. But at the same time, I have to calm myself down and be like, okay, things can go wrong, but that doesn't ruin everything. I know I can problem solve and pre-plan, but don't pre-plan too much, where if that plan goes wrong, everything goes wrong. It's like, no, like you can work around it, everything's fine. So I think for weddings, I always stress out a little bit more prior to it, and then the day of, and when I meet the couple, it's always very calm and very happy energy. So I feel fine. And I always have to remind myself before a wedding, I'm like, girl, like, you'll be fine. Like I think we overthink things so much. It can ruin, if you're overthinking, it can ruin a moment. But if you just keep calm, and if I just remember like, okay, like I've done this before, I can problem solve. Like I'm a little bit more confident when it comes to my work. I got this. So I think that's what has made me so much more open to the idea to keep shooting weddings. I think it's very, I don't know, it's very fun. It like in the same way it's stressful, it's like a roller coaster. You just feel like scared, but at the same time you're like excited. So it's just like, it literally is just the feeling of a roller coaster, where it's like, it's scary at the beginning, but then at the end you're all happy and like excited, and it was, the scare was fun, if that makes sense. So I think weddings last year really opened my mind, and I can't wait to keep shooting weddings because it's something I really enjoy for photography. Also, I feel like one of the parts that really helped for my wedding photography was the street photography side of things, because I feel like when you're doing street photography, you're thinking about so much. And it's like, especially shooting a manual, I'm thinking about my settings, and like I feel like my fingers at this point just do the work for me without having to look. I'm just sort of like mathing things out. And I always say, I'm like, I don't think I'm so technical, but at the same time I think I've made myself technical, at least to be able to capture what I envision before I capture it. So the fast pace of doing street photography and having to think about so many things in such little time really helps with weddings, especially for the the more high stakes moments, at least when it comes to like the ceremony, or when it comes to the party or the after party, the angle in which you capture things, or the type of lighting that you do for your photograph. I feel like it comes a lot with how my brain works when it comes to street photography, which is very like quick. I feel like when I do portraiture, I'm not thinking about too much. Well, I am thinking about a lot of things, but it's something that you can sort of pre-plan. But when it comes to street photography, there's no pre-plan. Like it's just like the way things are, and what you get is what you get, I think, at the end of the day. So when it comes to more fast-paced moments and weddings, my street photographer brain turns on immediately, which is something I appreciate, because if I didn't have that fast-paced photographer mind, or like the ability to sort of change really quickly in the way I use my camera, I don't know what I would do, to be honest with you. So one tip I would have for wedding photographers is definitely getting into street photography, or as a portrait photographer, I also would recommend getting into street photography, just because it helps with really getting to know your camera and really getting to know how fast you can really change a moment if you're just open to the idea of moving your camera one way and maybe opening your aperture in some way or closing it down. So I don't know. It's just, for me, it helps a lot. And I think my brain has adapted a little bit more to the street photographer side rather than the portrait photographer side, just because it's so much more, I become so much more comfortable behind the camera with it as well. Also, last year, I think I've also been a lot more aware of what being a photographer really means to me personally. I feel like capturing not just the moments of where I'm like in a city or somewhere new, or photographing things that are like, you know, new and upbeat and different. Also last year, I feel like I've been a lot more aware to photograph the quieter moments in my life and more of the intimate moments. So taking my camera around with me to when I see my family, or specifically creating moments and having sessions where I get to photograph my loved ones with a lot more intention, I feel like has helped me personally with like appreciating the smaller moments a lot more. I feel like back then I used to just see photography as something for just the new things and my new experiences, rather than carrying my camera with me and it becoming an extension of like my eyes, or an extension of like of the memories I get to keep because of it. Obviously not like pushing the camera into like every single moment and like not being in the moment or things like that, but you know, like keeping my camera always on with me so that I'm able to capture, or I feel like there's a moment that I really want to keep with me. It's accessible. Like now I have my camera on with me 24/7, I think, a lot more than I used to. So there's a lot of photographs that I got last year of very intimate moments and portraits of my family members that I think it's so much more valuable. I mean, it's not valuable to anybody else but me, but I think that's what makes it special, because it's like, well, it doesn't have to matter to anybody else. It just has to matter to me, and whatever emotions I pick up with that's what's so great about photography, that it's like, it doesn't have to mean anything else to anybody. It just needs to make you feel something. And I feel like that's what makes it so human and what makes it special to at least me. So last year I got to photograph my nephew a lot, which my first nephew, so he's the person who made me an aunt. So it's very special to photograph him, especially with, I mean, these years of like where he's so small and he's so innocent. It's just like the cutest thing ever. I do feel like like at least last year, every time I visit him, it's like I had my camera on with me, so I was always photographing him. And I feel like a lot of moments I would photograph him, and so he always saw me with my camera. And then the moments he didn't see me with my camera, I feel like he looked at me like with the most confused look of like, why don't you have your camera? Like, who are you without your camera? And I thought that was really funny because it just made me aware of how much I was trying to capture with my camera. But I don't know, I just thought it was really funny. But I got a lot of images that I really, really love, and I feel like I will be keeping in an album from now on because their photographs are so important to me. Also, one of the bigger parts of my street photography journey definitely came from this little quick trip that I made with my cousin, who's also a photographer. Shout out, Franco. And I think for him, we were a lot more open to talking about street photography. And so photographing the city with him was very sort of eye-opening to how much I've come along with street photography, because there was moments in which I would photograph something and I'm like, how many photographs did you take on this little walk? And he's like, oh, not so many. And I already took like 20 shots. And he's like, I didn't even see you. So I'm like, oh, maybe I did like create some type of little technique for myself when it comes to street photography. In the way it's like being able to, because I do feel like when it comes to street photography, at least for myself, I do try to not impose so much of me into a scene, more so just sort of keeping my photographs in a third perspective, or like a third person perspective, in which like, oh, this is what it would feel like for a person in this city to see the city. I mean, it's like, it just feels like a person in the city rather than like, I guess like a usual like documentary photographer who's out and really, you know, maybe flashing a person or staying in a place for a lot longer. I feel like I'm very used to, or I got sort of used to keeping pace the people walking around me. So I like to keep it very third person based. I still feel like even though I am trying to advance within my skills to, as I said, slow down a little bit more and maybe make conversation with the person beside me. For a photograph, I still really like the third person experience in being able to capture a city. So in DC, obviously it's very fast paced, and it just so happened that my cousin and I went to DC when the long-term effects of the government shutdown were taking place. So there was a lot of things or places shut down, which is why I feel like we spent a lot of time on the streets rather than inside buildings, even though we did have the opportunity to go inside this really, really beautiful museum. I remember one of the moments in the museum, I think one of the questions was, and I'm paraphrasing, is there a person in your life that encapsulates what the American dream means to you? And I remember sort of my first instinct was to think about my immediate family. So when it comes to my mother, who's an immigrant, and also my father, who still works in the United States, and also my grandfather, who also immigrated to the US and sort of brought his family. Being like a Mexican American, like having that American experience and having grown up in the US for I guess the younger parts of my childhood, really, it's such a complex experience because growing up Hispanic, you always hear about just the experiences and maybe even sometimes the traumatic experiences of why people have to go over to the US, or people having to be separated from their family. So this museum, I feel like, was made to really have that subject at the forefront because, or as the child of an immigrant or somebody who has immigrants in the large part of their family, it's like you think of the American dream and you immediately think of them because it's like, well, I mean, if we're talking about fighters and if we're talking about family-driven people and people who will sacrifice so much of themselves to upkeep what I feel like are American values, it would have to be an immigrant, like, period. like I really can't think of anything else, at least with me personally. And I thought, I remember it was like a little card that you had to write on, and so I was writing about that, and for some reason I thought it was going to be something unique or something. And then I started to take a look around the rest of the cards because you get to clip it onto like the side of sort of an exposition in the museum. And I started to take a look around, and it was the same story over and over and over again of like how having an immigrant family member or sort of an immigrant parent was the person we think of when we think about the American dream. And that sort of really impacted me because I told you, like, I thought it was going to be like a unique experience, and really it was not unique at all. But I also think that when so many people come into this museum and so many people thought about American dream and like who encapsulates the American dream and that being an immigrant, I feel like that speaks for itself. So last year, when it comes to our government, especially with that experience and reading all those personal experiences from so many people, while it being during a government shutdown, which, I mean, you make your own assumptions of what that was because, or who sort of was behind that. And I also believe the US is still in a partial government shutdown right now. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about how many people were actually working in government. Obviously, or there have been government shutdowns prior to like this one or last year's. But I think because I'm older, I was really able to look into what the government shutdown really meant and how many people it affected. So yeah, I don't know. It's just the whole like just like trying to encapsulate the whole experience of like a government shutdown and sort of witnessing on the news everything going on. I mean, so much like politics and so much hatred from politicians and so much sort of, I don't know, just it all, at the end of the day, it all sounds so stupid to me because it's all for these rich and powerful people that I feel like are always trying to nitpick and try to find things to keep society and people from communicating with each other and trying to find common ground and trying to keep us thinking that we're so different. And I feel like last year, not that I didn't believe this, but it more so just in the grand scheme of things, I think we are all more alike than we are different. And I feel like I saw that, I mean, just watching the news and witnessing the ways the government shutdown didn't just affect the rich and powerful, but also affected, I mean, us normal people. So, and also witnessing that through my photography and talking to people just like, I mean, around DC, around North Carolina, around Alabama, around Atlanta, around Mexico. And it's like, we're all so similar. And I see that through my photographs in the way it's like, we all laugh, we all cry, we all go through awkward moments. Like, I feel like I photograph a lot of awkward moments for some reason. or even music. Like, I feel like music connects us so much. I feel like everywhere I went, if there was a popular song, the popular song was going to be played everywhere and people knew the lyrics to that song. So I guess in that way, I'm trying to say, I think we're all so much more similar than what the big governments try to say we're not. I feel like people in big governments are always trying to divide us more and more every day. I feel like that's just not true. And everybody has their own biased opinion, and I respect that. But personally, I do feel like if we all realized that we're so much more similar than we are different, we could advance and we could actually create change in all grand scheme of things. I think one of the best examples of what actually uniting, even with all types of, I mean, everybody has their own opinions and everybody is different when it comes to, I feel like it's the little things, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel like a lot of people can differentiate good and evil. I just feel like that's a very human thing. And one of those moments was right now, here in Mexico. If you guys didn't know, there is this big protest around the whole country to protest against a big company. They're trying to basically take down our nature and the oceans and the beaches to create basically like a tourist attraction and water slides and hotels, which would literally destroy the environment of Mahahual, which is where they were trying to build. And I'm not sure if change is actually going to happen, but one thing that I feel like the community, and when it comes to people gathering together and really going on social media and showing up for the good in what would happen if we protected these spaces in the environment so that we could protect like the animals and the fauna. And what happens is that when everybody starts talking about the same thing, even if in the little things we're all like maybe on different sides of the political spectrum, but we all really see the benefit of keeping these spaces free from any type of human sort of like greediness when it comes to this big company that was trying to build literally a tourist attraction, as if there isn't a whole bunch of tourist attractions at this point. Especially because it was a company that wasn't even from Mexico, so it wasn't gonna benefit Mexicans in the grand scheme of things. But what happens when everybody got together is that it brought awareness, and with awareness, it brought signatures to write on that it's like, I'm against this. And so I saw so many people. I don't know how many signatures it has, the change.org website has right now, but last time I checked, it had 4 million. So I know 4 million people were against this project. And that's because of social media being a place where we can all come together and really express, like in the grand scheme of things, as I said, the good versus evil. And this was so much bigger than our little differences. And I feel like it really showed in that moment, because what's not good about keeping nature intact and protected? Like that has to be the good. So I feel like witnessing that, it makes me think so much more, and like how I really do think we're so much, when it comes to like the actual important things, I think we would all show up for the good. And I don't know, so I think that's me, because I do feel like at the core, I feel like I'm sort of a pessimist when it comes to things, but trying to find good, I feel like is the only way to keep prevailing in art or in life, I think. And I just think trying to stay positive in times where people are trying to just show you the negative of our earth and our world, and keeping hope. I think keeping hope that there are ways we can change the little things or big things in our world is the only way to prevail. So I think keeping hope, that's my only message to the world. Keep hope and keep trying to do good even when everything is going wrong. Anyways, now sort of recapping how last year ended. So my niece was born. So now I have a niece and a nephew, which is really cool. That made me super, super happy. I think it was one of the highlights of last year. I have yet to meet her because as she was born and as she was like just a few days old, I came back to Mexico and I missed out being able to meet her, but I still think of her so much, and hopefully one day I'll be able to photograph her too. So that's really cool. Also, Pichi, I don't know if you guys remember her, but Pichi was with me throughout whole last year, which I think the year prior she was back here in Mexico and I was in the US, so I didn't have a lot of quality time with her. But last year I got to spend so much time with her, and it was also the highlight of last year for me. It was being able to come back home to my little dog every single day and having a reason to get up early in the morning and having a reason to go out and take a walk and just sort of take in the sun a lot more was definitely because of her. So I do think mental health wise, she was a big reason why I think I was quite positive. I think last year I appreciate her so much. She means so much to me, and she doesn't even know. She's just walking around and sleeping and eating. But also, she got operated last year. At the end of last year during Christmas, she got operated. So I had to take good care of her. And at least for that time, I really did slow down just so I could really take care of her and take her through the process of her getting operated, which was quite scary. I get quite anxious when it comes to anything bad happening to her or her not being safe in any moment. It stresses me out. So gladly I had my family with me also throughout that moment. And I know it might sound like a little crazy, like what? Like she's just your dog, but for me, she's my kid. So it meant a lot. So that was also like a little bit of more like a stressful moment of last year. But yeah, I spent quite a few, like at the end of last year, is just really spending time with family and playing board games and stuff like that. Especially because here in Mexico, it's like there's always something going on, especially during the Christmas time. So there was a lot of like just going out and being joyful and appreciating the year that we are leaving behind. So that's sort of the recap of last year. So now, present time, I'm here in Mexico. I think I'll be here for quite a while, and I've been working a lot more on when it comes to my portrait photography, which I think I'll leave that for the next videos or future videos. Yeah, I think last year taught me a lot. It taught me to slow down. It taught me to really appreciate street photography for what it is, and like at least for what it is to me, which is just being able to capture the real moments in real time and being able to also photograph the big moments in the way the world was changing around me, especially because I had the opportunity to spend it around a few big cities in the US. So I think that was really important for my street photography advancements. I think I don't think I'll ever be at the height of what I think I could be as a street photographer, but I think the only thing I can do is keep photographing and keep on just taking my camera everywhere with me, and then also sort of timing when and how I approach photography, which is something I'm trying to be a lot more aware of this year, which now we have half the year to go. Yeah, I think last year taught me a lot, and I think I'll remember 2025 as lots of up and downs when it comes to my career as a photographer besides street photography. So I think I'll always have a a place for 2025 in my heart when it comes to photography. One of the pillars of like, or how much I could advance with photography in a year. So hopefully I'll be able to look back at this year and also take something from it like I did from last year. But I think that's everything I wanted to chat with you guys about. So I hope you guys stay around my channel and check up on me every once in a while, because hopefully I'll have more videos and more projects and more vlogs and more experiences to share with you guys. So thanks for watching.